I am going live today to talk ancestral healing with my lovely friend Georgia. Here she is. Georgia is an exceptional healer, channel, and I'm just going to invite her on now. Hey, Georgia.
Hey, how are
Hello.
ya?
How are you doing?
I'm well, and you?
I am good. I am really good. Yeah, I am really happy to have you on here and commence this chat about ancestral healing. I was just introducing you as this wonderful wisdom keeper, and I remember when we first came into each other's fields. I think it was through one of Sandrine's
Yes.
things. Yeah,
Yeah.
and just instantly I was like, I know you, I know your resonance, I know your frequency. So yeah,
Yeah.
really happy to have you on. And
Happy to
I
be here.
yeah. And so I wanted to talk about ancestral healing, and I know we had had a chat a couple of weeks ago for something you were running too, but I've have a workshop coming up on
Mhm.
Wednesday, which is the intuitive writing and sort of tapping into the stories of our ancestors
Yeah.
and doing a bit of
Mhm.
ancestral clearing as well. So I thought, what perfect opportunity to have Georgia on and talk a little
Yeah.
bit deeper about ancestral healing. So yeah, I thought we could just start by just sharing a little bit about what maybe you could just share like what your practice looks like. And I know we've kind of touched on this before that we do in ways we do similar work, but we do it differently.
Yes,
So
very much so.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, so I definitely started my work based on, the ancestors that I knew that were, African, and my work really started spontaneously, really. My grandmother ended up passing away, and right around that time, I was also like really into like songs from home. And so in between like the songs from home and like actually being able to see like my grandmother and talk to her, right? So those things are sort of what propelled me into my ancestral healing or my ancestral journey. And then after that, I just sort of focused on like getting more pieces of my story, which is actually really why I love ancestral healing and ancestral work, because like it's a really easy way to get a lot of information about yourself without really like having to do a lot of the like questioning yourself.
Yeah, 100%. It's so true. And I found that in my story as well. And my mom was adopted. I think I've maybe shared this with you before. My mom was adopted. So there was just, and actually, I've got adoption on my dad's side of the family as well. My granddad, my dad's dad was adopted. So on both sides, there's been this total disjointed kind of energy. And so it really, it helps you to piece together so many things when you're able to actually communicate with your ancestors and hear their
Yes.
stories, and especially if we
Mm.
come from lineages of displacement or lineages where there's been huge disconnection from the land, colonization, that sort of thing as well. It really helps to bridge all of those
Yes.
pieces together.
Yeah. And I think that's really important. Like a lot of people don't realize how important that is, I think. I think ancestral work in like mainstream is like pretty much not like people don't put as much of a light on it, but it's really like the one missing piece for me because it does tie all those beautiful things together, right? Just like different ancestries and like also it ties like your identity into it, and it also ties like, at least for me, like based on like my ancestors and the kind of things they were able to do, I was also able to sort of like figure out the kind of things I'm able to do. So like again, all those things that people look for, like what is my purpose? Like what are my skills? Like a lot of that you can answer or pick up pieces from like your ancestral lineage or in your ancestral healing journey.
Absolutely. And I think it's interesting, even people that are maybe more galactic coded. I know we're both very connected with the stars as well. I was talking to someone about this in my DMs just recently as well. And I think it can be quite a sort of star seed thing that we're like quite disconnected. We can feel quite disconnected from our human ancestry, but that's such a big bridge and such a big reason why we've probably incarnated on Earth at this time anyway, is to really piece together that those ancestral stories so that we can close them out and so that we can clear those timelines of dysfunction in whatever ways they're playing out, but it stops with us when we decide that we're going to be the cycle breaker, and that's often what we've programmed in as well, is
Yes.
to be that
Mhm.
that cycle breaker. So I think for people, and I know a lot of my client base are cycle breakers or healers. If we're not weaving in that ancestral healing, there's so much that we're missing.
Yes, for sure, for sure. And I think also that, people tend to think when we talk ancestry, we talk genealogy or we talk, ancestry on like a 3D sort of level. And for me, like lots of people are super shocked when, I go into the records and when I'm pulling ancestry, like I pull like galactics and I pull like, all this other stuff and they're like, wait, what? So oftentimes like, we don't connect like to like other types of ancestry. We're always like, very much in the 3D or even like very much in the genetics, right? But there are all types of different ancestors. And then when you start to look at, your galactic ancestors, and then you start to look at like, okay, like even your cultural ancestors, like and how they shaped like, the way your parents came up or the way you came up, like it really does like start to give like a clearer picture. And I think a lot of people often are like shocked how clear certain things can get when we're talking ancestry or, when we're talking about them. Because I'll be like, yeah, like it's in your ancestry, like right here. This is probably the reason why you do this and this and this and that. And they'll be like, how the heck did you? And I'm like, yeah, well, it's because it's in your, I mean, like it's in your, at least like it leaves marks essentially, right?
Absolutely. And I think we probably both hear that in our work a lot, is like, how the hell did you know that? And,
For
because
sure. I hear that a lot.
it's
Yeah.
totally, totally. And because it's written in that genetic coding, which you can read on that etheric level, whether it's through the Akashic records or someone's morphogenetic field, you can tune into all of that and start to read all of that information. And that's why we see those same patterns continued over and over again. I've tracked things in my ancestry that's, it goes back so many generations, like literally hundreds of
Yeah.
generations, and it's the same patterns that are reoccurring again and again.
Yeah, and I think that, that's also another key thing about ancestry is like it's very easy through the ancestral lens to like pick up patterns. For me, it's like it's so simple. Like a lot of times people tend to, go through like their own lens or like try and go through their own system. And it's like, yeah, some of that stuff you can pick up, but if you're working on your own system, some of that stuff you might be blind to, right? But like the minute you shift your lens to like ancestral, you're able to like clearly see the pattern. You're like, oh yeah, I see this pattern. Like it's happened here, it's happened here. So for me, like that sort of pattern recognition as well is like really like one of the benefits of ancestral work because you can literally follow that pattern to the beginning if you wanted to, right? To the source or the root of the problem. Or you could just pick it up and be like, yeah, it's coming in from this way and that way. And that's how you can, yeah, for me, there's so many ways, right, to use ancestral lineage or ancestral work or ancestral healing that like yeah it's pretty much like well for me it's like one of the main things. It's like a one-stop shop. Like you can get stuff about your identity, you can get stuff about like your actual lineage. Like I think it's another important thing to note that like all of us are tied to ancient civilizations, but most people don't tend to identify with that in the 3D world, right? Especially if they're not BIPOC, they're like, oh yeah, it's probably never happened, right? And then when you go into somebody else's Akashic record or something else, like you're like, oh yeah, but so like I was working with a lady, she's from Zimbabwe originally, but she's like this white girl, and she's from Australia currently, right? She's living in Australia, but like she's born in Zimbabwe and she spent some time in Zimbabwe. So when I was looking into her ancestry, like she has a lot of like South African like ancestry that is like local and native and does not completely look like her. And she was just like, how is that possible? And I was like, yo, you forget that, when you're born also is also like an important part of that because yeah, you're tied to, the ancestry of that land because you were born there too. But yeah, I feel like, ancient civilizations, places like Egypt, I was just talking to my sister about that. And she was never drawn to Egypt. And I was always like, Egypt. Anyway, so in Egypt, places like London, along like the places where like the Wiccan and all them are also like Native American, like all those like older type of spiritual religion or older type of ancestry. It's like we're all tied to those things, and I feel like if we all start to like pay attention to how we're tied to those things, like then it helps, bring in more even of that, like, oh, what I'm supposed to do or from it. It for me, like, it gives a good background or a good base from which to work on.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's what I find with a lot of people as well is they can't see their own mission or they can't see their own blueprint when they're still carrying a lot of the heavy ancestral traumas. It's like it's so distorted in their field. Like sometimes people come to me and they're like, "What's my starseed origin? What's my, and I'm like, I can't even see it because there's so much haze in your field. Like it's not until we start to clear out that Akashic field that it actually other things start to drop in and it starts to become much clearer what we're actually here to do at this time. And I think so much of what you were saying there as well about sort of ancestors of the land, it's so
Mhm.
connected, like ancestral spirits, earth, and being able to really connect with the land that we're on. So much of that is through ancestral bridging, whether we're tied to a land by blood or not.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that, that is something that we all sort of forget. It's like we all leave those traces, right? We are all tied to lands, like you said, lands that we don't have to be like, born from there or be from there to be tied to those places. Because again, the energy remembers, like the spirit remembers. There's like, for me, it's always been Egypt because Egypt like gave me a physiological response, right? Whenever I thought about it, I would cry and things like that. And I was like, okay, so I know, but for other people, like they might not have that physiological response, but that doesn't mean like, that they aren't tied to like these places. I'm pretty sure like, once you start to like really connect to these lands, like they tend to, I don't know, or at least I know probably for you, but for me as well, like they tend to speak, right? And that's one of the things that like at first when I didn't know how to connect to like ancestors, I was always really good at like connecting to the lands. Like I would, connect to the land of Hawaii where I was, or like the land of my mother, which is Madagascar. It's another island. And then I would connect also to like Gabon. And then that's like, which is where I'm from in Africa. And that one, I would always feel like a super strong connection and like super, like a lot of power coming from it. And then once I asked, like, I was like, what is all that about? And then they were like, oh, it's because you're meant to be here doing a whole lot of things. And also, like, this is where your power comes from. But like, which is weird because, I would have expected it to come from my mother's line, which some of it does, but like because I am very much, I was born on that land and things like that, like yeah, there's a lot more there for me, which again, I think it's important for people to go home or to go and, into those lands where they do have those ties to be able to get that kind of information. You
Absolutely,
know?
yeah. Yeah, and because every time you go somewhere, you're connecting in with the vortexes there, you're connecting in with the codex that land holds. And I love that you also talk about ancient civilizations, Atlantis, Lemuria, and I think that's such a powerful way to sync up with what it is we're here to be doing at this time as well, is sort of recognizing the imprints that we carry from those ages too, because so much of the threads of what we were doing in Lemuria or what we were doing in Atlantis or ancient Egypt is part of what we're bringing here now
Yeah.
too.
Yes, and that's another thing that, people miss often. Like they're like, oh, I mean, I don't really want to do a lot of work. Like, my ancestors, like that stuff all is all in the past. And it's like, yeah, maybe, right? But like those kind of things when you connect to like they also do change the present and the future. So I always tell people like, yeah, like it might not bother you like to not know what's in the past, but also like sometimes what's in the past can help you with your present and your future and you're just not thinking about it because, you're like not connected to that. I'm like, okay. So yeah, for me, it's always better, to at least know what's back there, so that's you're sort of aware as you move forward.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's such a key part. And I think when we do have the call to go to different land spots as well, it's so important to honor that call. And if I have a lot of people in my uh who come to me, clients, etc., who are grid workers. I'm sure we've spoken about this before as well, but if you have those kind of pings to go to these certain places, there's probably something that you're doing with the land there. So you're probably syncing up with some of the ancestral spirits there too, whether you're
Yeah.
totally conscious of it or not.
Yes, yes. And that's very much, I tell people like that in my work too. Like, if you like, oh, I keep dreaming about Italy. And I'm like, oh, yeah, when are you going? And like my sister, that's it. Like, she's like, it's random. It's Italy. I've never been. I'm like, but you should go. And then, even if you don't go physically, like, you can take yourself there, like, in meditation. You can always, like, connect to whatever those spirits are and, like, ask, like, hey, what am I supposed to be doing there? and can't go, but like physically at the time. But I definitely, would always encourage that because yeah, people don't realize, but like spirits of the land are ancestral spirits. So like we've been to like a lot of places and interacted with a lot of different energies. Those energies, like they remember their ancestral energies, a lot of them. Like especially if you were in like, Egypt and in all those places, or like there was the fall of something or the beginning of something else, and we were all there. Like a lot of us have those kind of lineages, and like some of us are drawn to those kind of things and some of us aren't. For example, my sister not drawn to go into Egypt, and I was always like, Egypt. Well, she just went like through one of her classes, and she just found out that like she lost like a kid in Egypt, so it was like really traumatic, and that's why she was never drawn to go to
Yeah.
Egypt,
Yeah.
which makes sense. But
Hmm.
again, you know what I mean? Like, but there was a past there, even though she'd never, been drawn to it, there was still a past there. And then she also was able to pick up like something from there that was like really important. So again, you know what I mean? Like, even if she didn't have like the drawn to it, that is an ancient land and where a lot of us were at, it used to be like the New York City, right? So a lot of us like cycle through there, and there a lot of us have those kind of memories. I was always drawn to it, and I have, pretty good memories from there, but I also have some pretty interesting ones. But
Yeah.
yeah, like I'm always like connect to the land, and then if you can, like, connect to the land where you're trying to go. That's another good one. Like always before you live, boy.
This is part two of my life with Georgia. Don't know what happened there. Very Mercury retrograde style. So I'm just going to wait for Georgia to join. Hi, Brianna. So hopefully, yeah, you're back. I don't know what happened
Yes, I'm
there. That
back.
was so weird. That was so
What?
strange.
But like you said, Mercury retrograde or something.
I mean, we should have done. We should have known. We should have known.
Yes, bit of that one.
Yeah. But I think we were taught. We were just really getting into ancient Egypt and the vortexes, the land. Yeah.
Yes. So we were talking about the land and how, it's very important to acknowledge the land and to connect with the land wherever we are, so we can get those pieces. And also talking about like, the importance of your own homeland, connecting to the places that feel like home for you. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think um, like land mediumship and learning learning how to channel the land, grid work, learning how the land speaks, all of those are such key parts of the pieces that we're here to bridge together. If we are someone that's meant to be a healer, meant to be a helper in some way, being able to really hear and be receptive to the land
Yes.
and how it speaks is so important. So
Yes.
important. It's interesting. I get that a lot with West Africa because I have a lot of ancestry on my mom's side from there. But despite
Mhm.
I've never actually been to West Africa, but I hear it. I hear it so loud, like it's right there in the ocean, all around the coast
Yeah.
there as well. I hear it
Yeah.
so loudly. So yeah, and it's interesting because you have, is it both your parents are from Gabon?
No, so one of my mother's from Madagascar, so from the
Ah,
island.
yeah. Sorry, you had said that
No, you're
before.
good.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, so my mom's from Madagascar, which is still considered Africa, right?
Yeah.
But it's just
Totally.
like it's because it's completely surrounded by water, and also because like they had different colonization. Like, yeah, they were colonized by the French, but they were also colonized by the Arabs and like a whole bunch of others. So they were really like, as my grandma likes to say, like mutt people. Like they're like really mixed. Like even my grandmother, after I spoke to you, I spoke to my aunt, and my aunt was like randomly talking about my grandmother, and she was like, yeah, because like her father was an imam, so he was like Arab, and then she was like, but like on her mother's side, like her grandfather was Irish, and I was like, oh, what? And she was like, yeah, and I was like, that is so random. So yeah, like they have like a lot of mix when it comes to that, but like on my dad's side, it's very clear, and it's very much like the land of Gabon, which is like really spiritual to begin with. So if that what that call is also like super loud because yeah, in African countries, like spiritual, practice is like sometimes like that's how the village life is arranged around the spiritual practice, right? So it's very much like an important part. And then my whole country, like, does one type of spiritual lineage, but they like break it down. So like the men have like one kind and the women have another kind, but it's like basically the same. So that's a different one because yeah, like the when you connect to the land there, like it's very much like it's very alive, put it that way. Like the like there's a literally like a folks tale about how like my country it's like 70% trees and only 30% people. So the folk tale goes that like before it was all like no people, and the first people of Gabon essentially like made a deal with the spirits of the land to like be able to inhabit like the 30%.
Oh,
And
wow.
yeah, so it's very like there's like every year they do like traditional dances to like the land guardian spirits and things like
Mhm.
that. And so yeah,
Mhm.
they're very much like connected to the land there. But like we talked, there's also like a lot of like water stuff that goes on because it is also a coastal town. And I think
Yeah.
like yeah, throughout Africa they also, are big into the water.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. All those
Hmm.
different water connection practices, definitely water rituals. And yeah, it's interesting you touched on the sort of different mixed ethnicities running through your bloodline
Yeah.
as well, because that was actually one of the things I had wanted to talk to you about, because it's something I've noticed a lot, is that a lot of, whether it's star seeds or cycle breakers, healers, whatever it is, we will often pick bloodlines that are drawing from lots of different places. Like rarely do we have quite homogenous, and you could argue that lots of people, don't have very strict, non-mixing of different
Right. Very true,
different
very true,
ethnicities
everyone.
across the world, right? But I
Right.
see it a lot that is very distinctive, like people that are very objectively mixed, right?
Yes.
That
Yes. I
are
would.
often star seeds, and it's because they're here to bridge and bring these different frequencies, and it's often people I find who've had a lot of discord between the different bloodlines as well. Like that could be very true for
Yeah.
my ancestry, that back and forth there's been discord, and it's like we've picked these lines where it's like, okay, yeah, so there's been stuff that's gone on here and stuff that's gone on here, and we're going to try and bridge it together and repair those
Hmm.
bloodlines as well. That's something I see a lot, and something
Yeah,
I see a lot in ancestral healing as well, is like different bloodlines that have had maybe difficulties together in the past, but now it's like they're being asked to reconcile it
work
on some
together,
level.
right? And
Hmm.
that's definitely something that I didn't realize until you said it. But yeah, it's a lot of the people that I work with are also very much mixed in their like ancestry when it comes to their soul's ancestry, and even like a lot of their DNA wise ancestry. Yeah, they tend to be either mixed or have like a very distinctive like other, and yeah, a lot of them as well. Like there's discord between the lines so that yeah, you can work it out and figure out some way, right? But also I feel like those guys are like there's like a certain weight to it, right? Because it's like, oh, we have to like find a way for our families to talk, when a lot of times like there's really no way, right? And I also like often tell them like, hey, like if there's no way, there's no way. There's just then it's just about like being respectful and letting both sides be them. But
Yeah.
they tend to, because that's what they're there for, right? They tend to like always reach for like, oh well, there must be a way, and then sometimes depending on the bloodline and the thing, it's like
Yeah.
it's
No
probably better not to.
reconciliation. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's the thing, it's like we can't necessarily make the ancestors themselves reconcile, but it's like through our own DNA we can go, okay, but it's reconciled within us, within
Yes,
our
yeah,
part
yeah,
that we
yeah.
play in it. That kind of thing.
Yes, and
Yeah.
that's really like, the gift, because yeah, once you reconcile it within you, then it reconciles within everyone. So I
Yeah.
think that's why I'm always like, bro, like ancestral healing, it for me it reaches so far out, right? That it's like one of the easiest way to do things because you do it once and then it affects so much,
Yeah.
of your life, and then you're like, oh yeah, good. So yeah, well, you don't just do it once, but you know what I mean? Like it's like the one thing where you can go to the root of it, or you can go to like the beginning of it and switch that pattern. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Absolutely. And then everybody else in the bloodline, whether, they're incarnated or not, they can still grab those codes as well and be free from those
Yes.
same patterns
Yeah,
too. I've seen
they
that
definitely
so many,
can.
yeah, so many
Yeah.
people, so many clients I work with, it's like they see all their family changing around them, and that's been the same for me too. It's like
Yes,
there's
definitely
so
for
many
me and
things.
my clients too. Like there's
Yeah.
definite like reactions and actions, and yeah,
Yeah.
it's really
Totally.
interesting to see. Hmm.
Like people feel it whether they know it or not, kind of thing. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah.
Just the other thing I actually had on my list, which I think would be really great to hear you talk about, is money. because I know you talk about this a lot, is the
Yes,
ancestral
money
line
is so
and
dope.
money. Yeah. And
Yeah, so ancestors and money is always weird, right? Because some people have like really wealthy ancestors, and so the money hits differently. And then some people, have like really poor ancestors, but like they themselves have like really good access to money. So it really like it's one of those things when it comes to ancestry. But what really helped me anyway was like getting to know money like as a 5D energy, is like almost like a living, breathing consciousness, right? And then also getting to know the ancestors of money, because it's like if you figure out what money is all about, then it's a lot easier to work with money, right? And so I had done some work where I was essentially like connected to money as like a 5D entity. And then further on, I was like, I really want to see like who your ancestors are. And then I ended up figuring out that the ancestors of money is love. Love. And I was just like, oh, it makes sense. But like it had to hit me. And then as far as, money when it comes to ancestors, like we have that possibility to be like manifesting money left and right, and to be able to, within this world, like be those like magnets for the money. But like back then, right, they had less access to it. And some of the our ancestors had like more need of it because there was like 15, 20 of them, right? So then it's like for me, when I look into a lot of people's like money past or ancestral story with money, like it really does stem from like an ancestor that like had to work and had access to like not a lot of money, or that like or they it leads back to the middle passage. Like for my family it didn't, because we don't have those ancestors. But for me, for my family, it was they were like miners. So like Madagascar has a lot of like precious gems,
mm,
and crystals and things. So like during the time, like there was a whole bunch of mining that went on in Madagascar. Some of my ancestors were like miners, so they were like stuck underground, and then like they had like no air and nothing, and like they were making like not enough money to take care of nothing. And so that's where sort of like the hatred and the like block to the money and stuff was for my line, right? Or at least on my mother's side, so I had to go like all the way back. But there was also like mishandling of money when it came to like the spiritual lineage, because she had made vows, right? Because she was like initiated into a specific spiritual lineage. She had made vows as to like not using the skills for the money, etc. Whereas though, we didn't be so. When she made those vows and things like that, and she turned from them later on, that sort of like created consequences to, the contract, because she had essentially broken the contract, right?
mm,
And so that created a lot of problems for my family. And it wasn't until like me and my sister came into the picture and started really working with some of those things that we realized like, oh, there's still contracts back there. So we had to go, and deal with the contracts. But
yeah.
yeah, for money is always really interesting when it comes to families, because like some families will like hoard money. Like some people like some families will have like, oh yeah, grandpa on that side, like they have all the money, and then on this side there's nobody that has money. And then like it creates this weird like imbalance. So yeah, like
Mm,
money is very like interesting when you like trace it through families, because yeah, like some people have like super access to money, and you're like, how did they manifest that much from nothing? But then like their counterpart on the other side was like struggling, so it's really, there are some like that will buck against the line, right, and be like, no, I'm gonna be rich no matter what. And then they do their stuff, and then they which my grandmother was one of those people. Like she was like, oh, I'm not just gonna, so she ended up using her stuff for money, and ended up for a while being at the peak of her game. Like she was really loving life, and life was loving her. But then like it crumbled, right? And that's because again the contract, people kept telling her
yes.
like, hey,
Yeah.
you forgot some stuff. So, and that's, what I tell people about, like, if you're not looking into, like, your relationship with money, like, you're missing something, because what's going to happen is you could be doing all of the cinnamon, all of the stuff that you want, but, like, working actively against, like, a block or against a contract that you, like, have no idea of. So it's always better to check your money story, or, to check that, like, side of your ancestry for those things. Because, if you are the curse breaker, the cycle breaker, like, you want to have like that clear path to do it, right? And a lot of times, like, what's going to hold you is like the stuff you don't know back there, because
Yeah.
you're like, no, I'm super powered up and I've got all these skills and all this stuff, but it's like you're forgetting that it came from somewhere as well. That's another thing I always tell people, like, okay, you tell me like you want to work with your ancestors, something that at school, but all those skills that you have that you're wondering how to use, like, where do you think they came from? You know what I mean? Those guys
Yeah.
probably had some questions too. So I think like, yeah, sometimes it's Yeah, I mean, I recommend it to everyone. Like before, I didn't know about it, right? I was just like, whatever. I had been, raised to do the little like honoring of my ancestors connected to them, but like never really, until I started that path, and then I was like, oh, that's what that was. Yeah, it
Mm,
became this whole, different thing. And honestly, I'm really glad that I started because, yeah, like my life looks different now. When I wasn't doing it, I was super anxious all the time. And I like really didn't have a lot. Like I had bought into the whole like because I'm a mother, right? So I bought into like the young mother being poor type of situation,
mhm.
and I was repeating like those patterns. And then
Yeah,
I was like one day, I just was like, "There's got to be more than this. I'm really
yeah,
tired of doing this. I know I like my mother did this, my sister did this. I'm not doing this. Like I'm tired of it." And that's when I started to really, and that's when all these other things came. But really, like for me, it was like a journey back home, right? Like legit, because I'm like here in the States and I wasn't connecting to a lot of that back home stuff. For me, it was like this whole journey back home. And yeah, it's like I went home, like, spiritually and energetically and all of those things. I just haven't gone back physically. And
mm,
then, spiritually and things like I've seen like the guardians of my land be like, yo, you're coming home. And when you come home, you're going to be doing this, this, this. So it's really good to have that confirmation as well. You know?
yeah. Definitely, definitely. And what you were saying there about the contracts is so key as well. Like I see that in like vast majority of my clients, especially ones I've worked with over a long term as well. We find a point where we're like, ah, this is where all the money contracts are sitting. This is where all the ancestral oaths, vows, contracts, agreements, curses, whatever they are, sitting there that are preventing you from being able to hold the amount of wealth that you're here to hold or that you have the potential to hold. It's yeah, and it's amazing what happens when you actually remove those contracts and you just see that flow of abundance just come in and come in all these different magical ways.
Yes, in
So
all these different
powerful.
magical ways. Yeah, for me, for my clients, it's a lot of like different opportunities that bring in a lot
Yeah,
more money.
yeah,
And yeah, and then like when it comes to money, it's also like, your own system, like your own nervous system. Because believe it or not, you inherit like, their anxieties too. So like
yeah,
if they were like anxious about money, and you're anxious about money, like, yeah, you can have all the clearing you want, but you're still going to end up doing something with it because you're so anxious, right? So,
yeah,
yeah, it's also like, I think people also skip the whole body part. They get so into like the galactics and the ancestral and the akashics, and like, you forget that like it all is tied to a body, right?
yeah,
And that body has certain limitations. And so, we want to let go. But even me, it happens to me sometimes. Like, I get so into like reading, someone's records, and I'm like, yeah, and like an hour and a half into reading the records, and I'm like, okay, why am I so tired? No, it's because I've been connected to the records for 2 hours,
yeah,
lady. Like, things like that. So I feel like that's also important. Our
hmm,
ancestors were way more into their bodies than
yeah,
we are because they had less, distractions and things. So, um,
yeah. That's such important piece, definitely, and something I think is really good to close on as well is the embodiment of it all. Is like we can do all of the energy work, which is so important. It's so like
so
it's
important. Yeah.
vital. It's vital to our growth and our evolution as human beings to do all of the energy work, but we also have to take care of our bodies because we have to be able to pull it all the way through all of our cells. Otherwise, what's the point? It's just sitting up here and it's not actually being integrated or grounded. Definitely. And I think that's where ancestral healing can be so supportive with that because it reminds us, no, we are actually on Earth right now. We actually have, we have the opportunity to connect with this beautiful planet and all of her beings, and we can connect with her in that physical, very physical way or very etheric way as well. And those kind of blend together. So,
Yes, amen. Yeah,
yeah,
beautiful.
totally. Yeah. Thank you so much, Georgia.
Thank
And
you.
yeah,
Thank you for having
weird
me.
weird tech glitch, but
It's
we made
all
it in.
good.
So
Yeah.
thank you so much for coming on. And
Thank
yeah,
you.
feel
Thanks for
free
having
to
me.
do you have anything sort of upcoming right
No,
now that you want
girl,
to share?
I am chilling. I am working on some
Cool.
stuff, but I do not have anything coming up now. I'm looking
Amazing.
forward to getting into your workshop. I just have to figure it out, girl. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Cool. Okay.
Alrighty.
Thank you so much, Georgia. I will speak to you soon.
Thank
Take care.
you.
Okay. Lots of
Bye.
love. Bye. Bye.